The man who was supposed to marry me, Julian, started growing distant and cold towards me when I turned 20, all because of a new girl. What I never expected was for him to tell me to sleep with his sworn enemy. I was stunned for a moment, and before I could voice my refusal, I heard him say, "Chloe feels insecure and gets jealous easily. As long as you're around, she'll overthink things. Only when you're with the person I hate most will she truly put her mind at ease. Grace, rest assured, as soon as I marry her, I'll bring you back immediately." Over the past decade or so, Julian had made me many promises, and he had kept every single one. I was willing to trust him implicitly, but why, when it came to something like this? Since appeared, Julian hadn't spoken to me for a whole month. But just last night, he suddenly knocked on my door. Just like before, he gently said to me, "A friend's restaurant just opened. They have a lot of dishes you like. Want to go together tomorrow?" Hearing his words, I froze for a second. For a moment, I even had an illusion, as if I had suddenly gone back to a time before Chloe came into the picture. I smiled and eagerly accepted his invitation. I was afraid if I hesitated, he might change his mind. Even on the way there, my heart was filled with anxiety and unease. Why had he suddenly asked me out, when he had been keeping his distance from me because of Chloe all this time? I hesitated for a long time, but ultimately didn't ask him about it. I was worried that as soon as Chloe's name was mentioned, the current atmosphere would immediately vanish. I greedily clung to that sliver of tenderness, even if it was just a dream. But what I didn't expect was that shortly after we sat down, I heard these words. I stood there, stunned, unsure how to react. I just felt a suffocating feeling in my chest, heavy, and my eyes welled up. I blinked, holding back my tears. I tried to say in a calm voice, "I need to use the restroom." I stood up, wanting to make a quick escape. But unexpectedly, as I passed by him, a hand firmly gripped my wrist. I instinctively stopped. Julian's voice came from beside me, "Grace, don't run away." His tone was as gentle as ever, but I detected an undeniable command within it. It was as if he was telling me that this matter was an announcement, not a discussion. I returned to my seat, and only then did he let go. He continued, "All these years, I'd been met with judgmental looks. Only didn't disdain me. She warmed my world. What about me? What am I to you?" I let out a self-deprecating laugh, a wave of bitterness washing over me. Yet, I chose to remain silent, not asking the question. It would only bring humiliation upon myself. Seeing that I hadn't spoken, he lowered his gaze to his legs. He said softly, "Grace, can you help me just this once, considering I lost my legs saving you? You know, I've never asked you for anything." With putting it that way, how could I refuse? He was right. I owed him my life. He saved me and supported me for all these years. Now that he needed my help, it was only natural for me to return the favor. So, I parted my lips, and after several seconds, heard my own voice utter a faint yes. Seeing me agree, Julian's face broke into an indulgent smile. Just like before, he raised his hand and gently stroked my hair. He promised again, "Good girl, don't worry. As soon as Chloe and I have our wedding, I'll bring you back. You won't be wronged for long." I didn't speak, but answered him in my heart, "No need. After this, we'll be even." To Julian, having achieved his goal, busily typed on his phone. He left me with a curt "I have something to do at the office. Finish eating and go home yourself," and left. I didn't need to think twice to know that his excuse about the office was just that, an excuse. He was probably going to find Chloe. I quietly watched his retreating figure grow smaller until it disappeared. Suddenly remembering the smile playing on his lips as he left, a hint of confusion appeared in my eyes. I realized Julian had become so unfamiliar. The I knew before always carried an air of suppressed aggression. Though he always hid his coldness when he was with me, I could still sense that he was unhappy. Unlike now, it seemed a genuine smile would appear on his face whenever he thought about seeing Chloe. I had always thought I was the most special person to Julian, but now, it seemed that was clearly not the case. The dishes had arrived, and adhering to the principle of not wasting food, I ate a little before returning home. As soon as I arrived, I saw Mrs. Margaret sitting on the sofa, looking imperious. I immediately realized she must be here for me. Sure enough, the next second, I heard her coldly command, "Kneel." She had never looked at me kindly, and causing trouble was common, something I had long grown accustomed to. But before, out of consideration for Julian's reputation, she had restrained herself somewhat. Today, however, before I could even react, she had me forced to kneel on the ground. My knees hit the floor, and I winced in pain. Then I heard her sarcastic voice from above me, "My son lost his leg saving you. and you can't even handle just kneeling? From Margaret's perspective, it wasn't surprising that she hated me. So, all these years, I had never blamed her. I had accepted all her accusations and insults. Seeing that I didn't struggle, Mrs. Margaret seemed a little more satisfied. But even so, she continued to scold me in an unpleasant tone. I heard you went out to dinner with Julian today? Didn't I warn you to stay away from Julian? Before, I could turn a blind eye and pretend not to see, but if you disrupt their relationship again, don't blame me for being unkind. I had never tried to disrupt their relationship. I parted my lips but couldn't utter a word of explanation. I simply replied, it won't happen again. She was a bit surprised that I agreed so easily. After all, no matter how much she disliked me before, I couldn't bring myself to say I'd leave Julian. Since and Chloe are getting married, it's not appropriate for you to continue living here. I'll give you 3 days to move out voluntarily. Her words were laced with a threatening undertone. To this, I simply replied, okay, I understand. Seeing me so compliant, she suddenly froze. After several seconds, she parted her lips, about to say more, when I heard the sound of a password being entered from outside. I instinctively turned my head and saw Julian, who had just entered, and Chloe standing beside him. I quickly averted my gaze. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Mrs. Margaret stand up to welcome Chloe. It was then I realized they had met here today to discuss wedding plans. They talked for 3 hours, and I remained kneeling for 3 hours. I remembered how before, whenever Mrs. Margaret found an excuse to punish me, Julian would always immediately stand up for me. But this time, he didn't even spare me a glance. My heart was filled with bitterness. It was at this moment that I finally and fully realized we could never go back to how we were. After discussing the wedding, Mrs. Margaret left. Julian went back to his study to get something, leaving just Chloe and me in the living room. I stood up, rubbing my sore knees. Then I heard her say deliberately, I heard Julian doesn't want to see you lately? Without waiting for me to respond, she continued, don't blame Julian. It's your fault for falling for the person he hates most. I looked up at her, surprised that Julian had told her so quickly. Even more surprising was her next sentence, as she lowered her voice and triumphantly said to me, to tell you the truth, I know Julian is deliberately sending you to Ethan. But what of it? Doesn't that just prove that he'll do anything for me? Her words were piercing, but undeniably, she was right. I had no intention of arguing with her and was about to turn and leave when I watched helplessly as she fell to the ground. Before I could react, the next second, I was pulled back by a force. I had been kneeling for 3 hours and was barely managing to stand steadily, relying on the nearby sofa for support. When he pulled me like that, I immediately fell to the ground. My back hit the corner of the table, and the pain made me break out in a cold sweat. On the other side, Julian helped Chloe up. After making sure she wasn't hurt, he finally looked at me and coldly said, apologize. I winced in pain and couldn't speak. Chloe quickly stepped forward, looking at me with feigned concern. It's okay, Julian. I just wanted to warn her that Ethan isn't a good person, but, she deliberately paused for 2 seconds before continuing, but is Grace's crush after all, so it's normal for her not to stand to hear anything bad about him. Hearing this, Julian gave me a complicated look. Then he said to Chloe, don't mind her. After all, I have nothing to do with her. Let's go. I'll take you back first. With that, they both left the house. After a while, I slowly got up from the floor and returned to my room. Julian came back late that night. By then, I was already asleep. The door was flung open violently, waking me up. I saw Julian standing by my bed. The smell of alcohol wafted from him. I was about to speak when he choked me. Julian, what are you doing? I struggled, asking him. But it was as if he couldn't hear me. Not only did he not let go, but he tightened his grip. Did you speak up for Ethan today? I froze for 2 seconds before realizing she was referring to what Chloe had said. I parted my lips, wanting to explain that I hadn't, but he had no intention of letting me speak. He warned me, Grace, I did tell you to seduce Ethan, but it was just for show. He's the person I hate most. If you actually get involved with him, don't blame me for turning my back on you completely. After saying that, he released his grip. I touched my neck and ubbed several times before I felt a little better. Watching him stumble away, it seemed he only came to warn me. For some reason, I found this incident ridiculous. He was the one who told me to go to Ethan, and now he was the one getting angry. I had explicitly offered to disappear from their lives if Chloe didn't want to see me, but he was the one who refused. These days were making me feel a bit exhausted. I didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, I woke up to see Julian sitting on the sofa. He seemed to have forgotten about last night and casually asked, "What happened to your neck?" I instinctively touched my neck and shook my head. "Nothing." Julian seemed to have asked out of mere politeness and didn't seem to care about my answer. He gestured with his eyes towards the invitation on the table and said, "Ethan will also be at tonight's gala." I nodded, understanding his implication, and responded with a simple okay. Seeing me pick up the invitation, he added, "I'm going on a date with Chloe today, so I won't be there. As soon as the rumor spread about you and Ethan, you can come back." No matter what he said, I obediently agreed. But despite my compliance, his expression remained grim. It wasn't until Chloe called him that he finally smiled, and shortly after, he left. That night, I stood alone in the corner of the ballroom. I had never attended such events before because Julian didn't like them either. Later, when Julian attended some galas with Chloe, he forbade me from attending. All things considered, this should have been my first time attending. I nervously picked up my phone and saw news pop up about Julian and Chloe's impending engagement. A knot formed in my stomach, and I put the phone away. Then I heard someone nearby say that Ethan had arrived. Remembering what I had promised him, I hesitated for 2 seconds before finally walking towards him. However, just as I was wondering how to approach him, I suddenly felt someone shove me hard, and I lost my balance and lurched forward uncontrollably. Just as I closed my eyes, bracing for impact, I fell into a clean, comforting embrace. For I opened my eyes and saw Ethan's face. He frowned and said with an annoyed tone, "Can't you stand properly?" In that instant, for some reason, what Mrs. Margaret had said suddenly popped into my head. And then, on a whim, I asked, "Can you take me in?" He clearly hadn't expected me to say such a thing and froze for a second. Then, in a mocking tone, he retorted, "Everyone knows I can't stand Julian. Even if he kicked you out, you've come to the wrong person." As soon as he finished speaking, before I could react, he lifted my chin. "What's on your neck? Did he choke you?" I instinctively touched my neck. I remembered covering it. How did he still see it? I accidentally. Before I could finish speaking, Ethan swept me into a bridal carry. Seeing my stunned expression, he probably guessed my confusion. He countered, "Didn't you want to come home with me?" Before leaving, I looked at everyone's shocked expressions and thought, I must have completed the task. But I hadn't expected that as soon as we got home, Ethan would simply leave me alone. I felt a bit bewildered, but I remained sitting in the same spot. It wasn't until Julian called me that Ethan emerged from the room. For a moment, I was unsure whether to answer the call. Then I saw him approach me and mutter softly, "I don't know what your intentions are coming to me today, but if you choose to leave, don't ever show your face to me again." After saying that, he took the hand holding my phone and answered the call for me. The next second, Julian's voice came from the other end of the phone, demanding, "Grace, where are you right now? If you're not back by 10 o'clock, don't even think about coming back." With that, Julian hung up the phone. Based on my understanding of him, I could easily tell he was angry. But, why? Before I could think deeper, I felt a sense of danger. I turned my head and saw Ethan's face, colder than ice. Both of them were people I couldn't afford to offend. Our eyes met, and in that instant, he reverted to the expression he had at the gala. "What? You want to use me to get back at Julian, and now he coaxes you back with a single phone call? Grace, why are you so naive? You don't actually think there's still a place for you at home just because he's marrying Chloe, do you?" He was right. Mrs. Margaret had tried by all means possible to kick me out. Chloe didn't like my presence either. I was already planning to leave the Gu family. Why had Julian's words swayed me just now? When I didn't respond, Ethan stood up and was about to go back to his room. "Go. Don't appear before me again." Hearing this, I instinctively rushed over and hugged him. "Ethan, I'm not leaving." His body stiffened. He turned around and asked, "Are you sure?" I nodded. Just as I managed to say a faint yes, Ethan silenced me with a kiss. When I was on the verge of suffocation from the kiss, he suddenly pulled away. He whispered in my ear, "Since you've used me, don't even think about leaving." Used me? His words from earlier, about me using him to get back at Julian, suddenly came to mind. I wanted to deny it, but for some reason, I couldn't speak. It was as if, deep down, I did harbor such a thought. I shook my head, about to speak, when Ethan kissed me again. His kiss seemed different from his cold and rigid exterior. It was tender. It made me, somewhat, lose myself in it. I closed my eyes. So be it, I thought, just a moment of indulgence. Soon after, my phone rang again. I knew it must be Julian calling again, having not waited for me to return home. But this time, neither of us paid any attention to it. When I woke up the next day, daylight had fully broken outside. I picked up my phone and saw dozens of missed calls and over 10 messages. Just then, Ethan suddenly spoke. "Let's go to the registrar's office to get our marriage certi. Ficate first, then you can go back and pack your things." Huh? I froze, looking at him with a look of disbelief. "Five," I asked with uncertainty, "you want to marry me legally? Otherwise, did you think I was a coward like Julian?" Before, if I heard anyone speak ill of Julian, I would absolutely fight them to the death. But this time I felt nothing inside. I was grateful that he saved me, and it was true I had liked him for so many years. Even though he abandoned me again and again because of Chloe, and wronged me again and again to please her, in my heart, he was still the most important person to me, no matter what role he played. But when he suggested I be with Ethan, just to make Chloe feel secure, in that instant, my heart completely turned cold. I wouldn't hate him, but I wouldn't like him anymore either. However, marrying Ethan was something I had never even considered. After all, he and I were from different worlds. Ethan looked at me intently and said softly, "You know full well Julian won't let you go easily, and I, conveniently, can protect you." Although I couldn't quite understand what Julian was thinking, I knew Ethan was right. I didn't want to stay in the Gu family anymore, and Ethan's words truly moved me. So, on a strange impulse, I agreed. The marriage registration process was quick. Even after coming out of the registrar's office, I still felt a little unreal. "I'll have the driver accompany you. I need to go to the office first." I nodded. On the way back, I read Julian's messages again. In the end, I chose not to reply. At this hour, he probably wasn't home. And once I packed my things, from then on, we would be strangers. But what I hadn't expected was that as soon as I opened the door, I saw Julian and Chloe sitting on the sofa. Seeing me return, the smile on his face vanished at a visible speed. He coldly demanded, "Where were you yesterday?" For some reason, I suddenly found it ridiculous. He clearly already had the answer in his heart, so why ask the obvious? Did he want me to admit it myself, or did he hope I'd give him an answer he'd be satisfied with? Before, I always thought I was the person who understood Julian best in this world. Because in this world, it seemed only I could get close to him. Even if he didn't speak, I could guess what he was thinking. But now, I suddenly realized I couldn't understand him at all. As he wished, I went to find Ethan. I parted my lips, about to answer, when Chloe beside me let out a gasp, looking at me with a shocked expression. She said, "Grace, on your neck, that's not a hickey, is it?" Hearing her words, I instinctively covered my neck. When I woke up, Ethan's news about getting married had caught me off guard, and I had no mind to notice anything else. No wonder I kept feeling the staff were giving me strange looks when we were getting our marriage certificate today. Before I could regain my composure, I saw him walking towards me aggressively. Without a word, he tried to drag me towards the bathroom. A bad feeling rose in my heart, and I struggled fiercely, asking, "Julian, what are you doing?" He ignored me and only tightened his grip. It wasn't until we entered the bathroom, and he turned on the shower, drenching me in cold water, that I realized what he intended to do. I couldn't help but shiver and cursed, "Julian, are you insane?" "I'm insane? Didn't I tell you not to let him touch you?" "Grace, are you testing my limits?" I was freezing and tried to escape, but he pushed me back. In a moment of impulse, I couldn't help but slap him, reminding him, "Don't forget, you're the one who told me to go to him." Julian was rendered speechless. After 2 seconds, he roared at me with an angry tone, "I didn't tell you to sleep with him." Actually, I hadn't actually slept with Ethan. When the kiss grew too intense, he pulled away and whispered in my ear, "It's not the right time yet." The feeling Ethan gave me was subtle. Sometimes, I even had the illusion that he liked me. But before this, we hadn't really interacted. I shook my head, about to shake these thoughts from my head, when I felt Julian try to strip my clothes off. "You have to get clean today." I quickly shoved him away, wanting to run out. Unexpectedly, my foot slipped, and Julian pulled me back again. Fortunately, Chloe appeared at that moment and stopped Julian. She said, "Julian, don't be rash. That hickey on her neck clearly looks like it's made with makeup. Julian, Grace might not want us to get married, which is why she deliberately didn't come home last night and did something like this." Those 2 brief sentences were enough to make Julian calm down. When he looked at me again, his eyes were filled with coldness, and even a hint of disgust. "From today on, you're not allowed to go anywhere. If you want to start dating anyone but Ethan." I didn't want to bring up those words. But I also didn't want to endure his erratic and unreasonable temper anymore. So, I said softly, Julian, Mrs. Margaret is right. You two are getting married, and it's not appropriate for me to continue living here. So, I came back today to pack my belongings. As soon as I finished speaking, before Julian could react, Chloe interjected, Grace, don't be rash. I know you like Ethan. But if you leave the Gu family, you'll have nowhere to go. She seemed to be concerned about me, but she was actually hinting to Julian. Sure enough, Julian let out a sarcastic laugh. He threatened, Grace, I told you, if you dare to leave, it won't be easy for you to come back. They seemed to have decided that I was throwing a tantrum. I didn't offer any further explanation and immediately began packing. The things here were all bought by Julian, so I didn't take any of it with me. As I was leaving, I paused for 2 seconds and said, regardless, I wish you happiness. The moment the door closed, I heard something smash against the floor. And the words, have them cancel Grace's BA. NK card, were trapped behind the closed door. But he didn't know that I hadn't even taken it with me anyway. 7 The day I moved into Ethan's house, the news of our marriage registration made it onto the trending topics. Seeing him staring at his phone, I thought he was upset about it. But unexpectedly, he suddenly said, let's go out for dinner. Consider it a celebration for getting married. Today's Ethan was a bit different from yesterday's. Yesterday, he was haughty, cold, and exuded a dangerous aura. But today, he seemed almost playful. I shook my head, thinking it must be my imagination. However, shortly after we arrived at the restaurant, Ethan received a phone call, and his expression changed. He told me to order food first, then went to the restroom himself. I ordered a few dishes randomly and then sat, lost in thought. Just then, I suddenly heard a familiar voice from nearby. Grace! I turned my head and saw Chloe and Julian. I frowned, feeling a wave of silence. When I left Julian's house, I thought we wouldn't see each other often anymore. But the next second, we ran into them at the restaurant. What irritated me was that he was clearly worried about Chloe being upset because of my presence. My leaving was the best for all 3 of us, yet they were stuck to me like glue. I didn't understand, and I couldn't understand why. I nodded briefly at them and then turned my head away. Just as I expected, Chloe insisted on asking, Grace, who are you having dinner with? It's none of your business, is it? Before, out of consideration for her being Julian's chosen one, I tried my best not to get into a conflict with her. So, no matter what she did, I endured it. All things considered, this was probably the first time I had talked back to her. Chloe's smile immediately froze. After several seconds, she turned to Julian with a pained expression and said, Julian, I didn't mean anything else. I was just worried that Grace might do something bad for money. Julian's face darkened when he heard this. He said coldly, Grace, if you come back with me right now, I'll pretend nothing happened. Go back for what? To continue being abused by them? All these years, I had felt guilty because of his leg. I had accepted all of Mrs. Margaret's punishments and abuses. It wasn't until now that I realized my true feelings. If he hadn't been there, I would have wanted to leave a long time ago. But now, I had no lingering attachment to him. I had been by his side since I was 8 years old. Whenever he needed something, I would do whatever it took to get it done. I had diligently taken care of him for 12 years. I felt that I didn't owe him anything anymore. I had always thought that leaving Julian would make me sad. But that day, the moment the door closed, my first breath was one of relief. It was then I realized that I had long since stopped wanting to be tied to him. Julian and I wouldn't work out. Perhaps even if we ended up together, we wouldn't be happy. I parted my lips and said softly, Julian, from now on, let's act as if we don't know each other. I won't interfere with your lives, and you shouldn't interfere with mine. As I finished speaking, I saw Julian freeze. For a moment, I even thought I saw a flicker of panic on his face. But it disappeared in a second. I must have been mistaken. I didn't overthink it, nor did I have any intention of delving into it. I had said my piece. Surely, proud as Julian was, he would leave now. Just as I expected, Julian nodded, about to say something. But just then, Ethan appeared. For some reason, a bad premonition suddenly rose in my heart. Sure enough, the next second, I heard Julian, with a grim expression, demand, are you out to dinner with Ethan? Don't you know he's the person I hate most? I smiled at him, holding back from reminding him that he was the one who put me in front of Ethan. I simply said, that's none of your business, is it? None of my business? Julian let out a sarcastic laugh and said, looking at me with scorn, don't you know Ethan is already married? Grace, do you know you're being a mistress right now? Do you have no backbone at all? A mistress? But, wasn't I the one who married Ethan? I suddenly remembered that the photos hadn't clearly shown my face. I didn't speak, but Ethan, who was standing beside me, couldn't help but say, "Since you already know I'm married, didn't you bother to find out who I married?" "What do you mean?" Julian looked at him warily. Seeing that Ethan was about to reveal the truth, I quickly stopped him and said, "I suddenly don't feel like eating anymore. Let's go home." He gently agreed, took my hand, and walked out. However, as we passed Julian, he said, "I told you, if you couldn't take care of her properly, then I would. You gave me this opportunity yourself." 8 After leaving the restaurant, my mind was still reeling from what Ethan had just said. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but before I could speak, he countered, "Why didn't you mention our marriage? You don't want Julian to know?" His tone held a hint of displeasure. If I listened closely, it seemed to also carry a touch of grievance. I answered honestly, "He hates you so much. If he knew we were married, he'd go mad on the spot. I just feel a bit exhausted." "Ethan, what did you mean by what you just said?" He smiled and reminded me, "Do you remember saving someone before?" I searched my memories carefully and then remembered that on my 18th birthday, I wanted to go to Julian's office to celebrate with him, but on the way, I encountered an injured man. "So, that person was you." He patted my head and nodded. "Even though you didn't notice me at the time, I fell in love with you at first sight. Unfortunately, you were Julian's person, and I had no opportunity to get close to you. For some reason, I found it a little amusing." So, Julian had personally given Ethan this opportunity. "Grace, you don't need to feel burdened. I know you don't like me right now. But it's okay. As long as you're by my side, we have all the time in the world." I suddenly understood why Ethan was in such a hurry to marry me. It was the first time someone had confessed their feelings to me, and my heart quickened. I averted my gaze. The sweet atmosphere didn't last long. Then came the bad news. I ended up on the trending topics for being a mistress. Someone uploaded the video of our argument in the restaurant, and it went viral online. I knew almost instantly that Julian must have been behind it. Ethan immediately called and had the staff announce our marriage on the office's official social media. The moment the tables turned, Julian, on the other side, furiously smashed his phone on the ground. He demanded of Chloe beside him, "Didn't you say Grace would come back this way?" Chloe was clearly stunned. I didn't expect it was her who married Ethan. "Julian, isn't this good? She has her happiness, and we'll get married too, okay?" Julian, who always used to talk about marriage, couldn't say a word at that moment. After a long while, he slumped to the ground dejectedly. He said, "You can leave now. Don't mention the wedding anymore." "Julian, are you canceling our wedding because of Grace, an outsider?" Julian looked at her coldly. "Grace is not an outsider. Get out of here immediately. Don't make me say it twice." Although was a bit resentful, she eventually left. Julian sat alone in the living room for a long time before he murmured to himself, "I understood too late, I regret it." After saying this, he struggled onto his wheelchair and went out. Not long after, I heard a knock at the door outside. I walked over and opened the door, finding Julian sitting there. Seeing this, Ethan quickly pulled me behind him and asked with an unwelcoming expression, "What are you doing here?" "Ethan, as long as you're willing to give Grace back to me, I'll give you anything you want." In my memory, this was probably the first time Julian had swallowed his pride in front of Ethan. It was for me, but this realization didn't fill me with joy. After being rejected by Ethan, Julian turned his gaze to me. He said, "Grace, please come back to me, okay? Please, for the sake of my legs, come back to me, okay?" I let out a short laugh and said, word by word, "You traded your legs for me to be with Ethan, and I upheld my end. We have no ties anymore. Grace, I regret it, I was wrong. But I don't regret it." I averted my gaze and said to Ethan next to me, "I'm tired and want to go to sleep now." He nodded. "Okay, leave it to me." I don't know how Ethan handled it, I only know that not long after, Julian was sent abroad. On the day he left, he even called me. He told me, "Grace, Ethan is a devil, you'll regret being with someone like him." Will I regret it? I don't know. I only know that I really like my life now. He loves me enough, yet he also gives me enough freedom. However, I also asked Ethan this question, "Won't you regret marrying me?" Ethan's answer at the time was that no matter if I loved him or not, he had a lifetime to take things slowly with me. I think I agree with that statement now. As for whether I'll regret it, I want to spend the rest of my life finding the answer. Thanks for watching today's story. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section. Feel free to share your opinions, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.